It was the betrayal that shook the royal family and the rise of the Pathet Lao. How a member of the royal family, Prince Souphanouvong, joined forces with communist revolutionaries and changed the course of Laos forever.
Laos occupies a most significant place on the world scene. So, Your Majesty, we're glad to have you here. I hope that you leave here convinced we are wholehearted behind your effort to maintain the freedom of your people. We wish for you what we wish for ourselves, and that is peace and an opportunity to develop our country. So I hope that all here will join in prosperity and peace of the people of Laos, to the well-being of the government, and to the very good health of His Majesty the King.
Laos had a long history of royal monarch rule, dating back over 600 years to the establishment of the Kingdom of Lan Sang. For centuries, the monarchy represented stability and unity in Laos. But then French colonialism disrupted this system in the late 19th century, introducing foreign control and weakening the monarchy's influence.
Strategically located in the heart of Southeast Asia, the landlocked Kingdom of Laos is slightly larger than Idaho. It is a primitive land. Barely 15% of its 3 million people can read or write, and many Laotians in remote regions still believe the world is flat. Life is hard and short, with an expectancy of but 30 to 40 years. Women work and weave, live and labor in huts and hamlets where time has seemingly stood still for decades, generations, centuries. Struggling for existence and survival, the average Laotian's per capita income is less than $70 a year. Only the cities reflect the events and influence of the 20th century, and even here, much of the past is retained and remembered. Thrust into the turmoil that has gripped Southeast Asia for 25 years, the Kingdom of Laos has passed from colonialism to independence to civil war.
By the end of World War II, Laos was still under French colonial rule, but yearning for independence. But then colonial exploitation and mismanagement created deep divisions within Lao society, resulting in three competing political factions. The Royalists, led by King Souphanouvong, who sought to restore royal power and maintain traditional authority in Laos. The Neutralists, led by Prince Souphanouvong, who aimed to establish an independent Laos free from foreign influence and to unify the country through diplomacy. The Communists, led by Prince Souphanouvong, or the Red Prince, and the Pathet Lao, who believed communism was the only path to true independence and social equality. During the chaos of World War II, Prince Pathet Lao, Prime Minister of the Laois, declared independence after the Japanese occupation ended. His vision was to create a fully sovereign Laos, free from both French colonial rule and external influence. The Laois' independence was short-lived. French forces, backed by the Royalists, quickly regained control, forcing Pathet and the other Laois leaders into exile. This failed attempt at independence deepened divisions within Laos. But then fractures emerged within the royal family and Lao leadership. King Souphanouvong, leader of the Royalists, refused to support the independence declaration. He believed aligning with the French would ensure stability and modernization for Laos. Prince Souphanouvong, a moderate neutralist, supported independence but favored a diplomatic approach, advocating gradual separation from the French influence. Prince Souphanouvong, influenced by his time in Vietnam, rejected colonialism entirely, aligning himself with Ho Chi Minh and the Viet Minh, who began leaning toward communist ideology as the only solution for Lao sovereignty.
Ten years ago, a little-known region of French Indochina, Laos, today has the dubious distinction of being one of the world's most explosive troubled areas. A country of three warring factions, one founded by Prince Souphanouvong here, which is pro-Western. A second that is led by Prince Souphanouvong, that takes a neutralist stand. And a third headed by Prince Souphanouvong, which, as may be expected these days, is a belligerent communist group. A tragic situation to which King Souphanouvong lends cruel irony. As a monarch, he represents a mere bow to tradition, being completely powerless and totally ineffectual. And though he presides at some functions, including sessions of the Laotian parliament, an idea of the importance with which the communists regard his sittings is suggested by these empty seats. The Reds, to show their contempt for him, refuse to attend. The Pathet Lao faction, as the Laos communists are known, prefer to remain hidden in their strongholds until they are ready to raid and terrorize the countryside. They object vigorously to prying eyes, and here you see the welcome accorded a Movietone news unit seeking to learn their side of the dispute.
In 1949, France granted Laos partial autonomy within the French Union. The monarchy was reinstated and a national government was established. But then, this autonomy revealed and worsened political divisions. King Souphanouvong and the royalists consolidated power but were viewed as puppets of the French. This undermined their credibility among many Lao people, who saw them as complicit in colonialism. Prince Souphanouvong, advocating for neutrality, used this period to push for unification among the factions. However, his moderate stance alienated both royalists and communists. Prince Souphanouvong, radicalized by his alliances with the Ho Chi Minh, rejected autonomy as insufficient and began organizing a communist resistance.
Nurtured in the mountainous northwest provinces of the strategic kingdom. Under Prince Souphanouvong, a communist movement is formed to challenge the government in Vientiane. The rebels call themselves the Pathet Lao, meaning land of Lao, and they are supported and supplied by communist sympathizers in North Vietnam. There are, through the infant years of Laotian independence, attempts to integrate the Pathet Lao into the central government and its armed forces. But the efforts fail, and the communists continue their war of insurgency. Strengthened from within and without, the Pathet Lao stream into, through, and out of the jungles that provide them sanctuary.
The 1949 autonomy deal failed to unify Laos, leaving the country vulnerable to escalating political conflict and external influences.
A tentative step toward peace in Southeast Asia is taken in the pivotal country of Laos with the forming of a three-way coalition government. The United States, which has resumed giving Laos $3 million in aid monthly, has long urged such action. President Kennedy and Soviet Premier Khrushchev found the coalition their one point of agreement in their Vienna meeting last June, and its fulfillment prompts an exchange of friendly notes between them. Of the three Laotian princes involved, the pro-Western one is Prince Souphanouvong, who has announced his retirement from political life. He had held out against the coalition rather than relinquish two key ministries to the neutralist bloc, as prescribed by the 14-nation Conference on Laos in Geneva last year. Pro-communist Prince Souphanouvong, whose Pathet Lao forces control much of Laos, becomes Deputy Premier and Minister of Economy. General Phumi Nosovan, who now heads the pro-Western faction, is also Deputy Premier and Minister of Finance. Neutralist Premier and Defense Minister Souphanouvong will lead a delegation to Geneva this month to sign the conference agreement. The government was formed in an officers' clubhouse in a jungle town in communist ground. There are still unresolved problems, such as the disposition of the Pathet Lao army, and the good faith of all parties has yet to be tested. But for the moment, the world can draw a breath of relief over the news from Laos.
Prince Souphanouvong, one of King Souphanouvong's sons, he and King Souphanouvong were half-brothers. This placed him slightly outside the inner circle of power. But then his exposure to colonial injustices and communist ideology led him to reject traditional royal expectations. Souphanouvong earned a degree in civil engineering, where he encountered Marxist ideas that resonated with his frustrations over colonialism. While working on infrastructure projects in Vietnam, Souphanouvong formed alliances with Ho Chi Minh and the Viet Minh. These experiences solidified his belief that revolution, not diplomacy, was the key to independence. Souphanouvong earned the title, the Red Prince, for his alignment with communist ideology. His revolutionary ideals, combined with his royal background, made him a polarizing figure in Lao politics. By the early 1950s, Souphanouvong had fully embraced communism, setting him on a collision course with the royal family and Western-backed forces. In 1950, Souphanouvong co-founded the Pathet Lao, a communist organization aimed at overthrowing the monarchy. The Pathet Lao received extensive support from North Vietnam and the Soviet Union, including weapons, training, and strategic guidance. But then the Pathet Lao evolved into a formidable insurgent force, using their ties with Ho Chi Minh and the Viet Minh to gain a foothold in northeastern Laos.
Government forces suffer rout and retreat, withdrawal and defeat, as the Pathet Lao forces extend their grip on the country, spreading out of the northern provinces to sweep south and west toward the strategic plain of Jars. By the spring of 1961, the rebel forces appeared to be in a position to take over the entire country. This map illustrates the expansion of the Pathet Lao in the 7 years following the end of the war in Indochina.
The Pathet Lao controlled key regions, including the Plain of Jars, which became their stronghold. But then they leveraged this control to implement communist governance, rallying rural populations to their cause. Fearing the spread of communism, the US provided billions of dollars in aid to the royal government. But then internal divisions and the monarchy's reliance on Western powers alienated much of the population. Meanwhile, the Pathet Lao received weapons and manpower from North Vietnam, and the Ho Chi Minh Trail became a lifeline for their supplies. But then, the conflict turned Laos into a proxy war between Cold War superpowers, with devastating consequences. The US bombing campaign between 1964 and 1973, the US dropped over 2 million tons of bombs on Laos, making it the most heavily bombed country per capita in history. But then this campaign devastated rural areas, driving many to support the Pathet Lao. In 1975, after a final offensive, the Pathet Lao seized control of Vientiane. The monarchy was abolished, and the Lao People's Democratic Republic was declared, with Souphanouvong as its first president. The fall of the monarchy ended over 600 years of royal rule in Laos, ushering in a new communist regime. Prince Souphanouvong's betrayal of his royal heritage wasn't just a personal story. It was a turning point that reshaped the history of Laos. His actions symbolized the broader struggles of a nation caught between tradition, colonialism, and the ideological battles of the 20th century. Thank you for watching. If you found this story insightful, make sure to like, subscribe, and leave a comment on what aspect of Lao history you'd like me to cover next. Until next time.